Alrighty, friends, we're back. Your favorite podcast of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 622. We are recording on May the 30th. Yes, we're almost to the end of the month. It's also my daughter's birthday today. So happy birthday, Megan.
Happy birthday, Megan.
And 20. She's 20.
What?
Crazy. Yeah, 20. Anyhow. I know. But yeah, we're ready for another show. 4 stories for you this week. But Aubriana, how you doing?
I am good. I had a nice long weekend, Memorial Day, remembering all of our, fallen soldiers who gave their lives, and just time with family and friends. So it was nice. Lots of barbecues. The weather was beautiful. And I have a very short week, which is exciting for me. So I am taking off Thursday and Friday to celebrate my anniversary. So big 16.
Awesome. Wow. You only look 16. So, I mean, that's, yeah. Anyhow, that's great. Yeah. And, it's same here. I managed to get up to a friend's cottage last weekend with our friend Karsten, who was in town. So that was fun. And yeah, the weather here has been amazing. It's like going to hit like 30 Celsius later this week. So and it's just sunshine for like as far as you can see in the forecast. So I'm super happy. Yeah. So anyhow, all right. Well, let's jump into the show. I'll let you kick it off as usual, and we'll get going.
Yeah, this is one from the archives. I'm telling you, this is a name we haven't talked about in a while on the show, but we used to talk about them a lot and see them a lot at a lot of the LBMA events. Unacast, right? So Unacast has announced the availability of their Insights, a powerful new location intelligence platform that's geared towards real estate investors, retailers, and marketers who kind of want to understand how people are moving within specific locations around the US. So they are trying to provide like more migration status, if you will. So how are people moving, demographic trends around city, state, even postal code level, and look at the foot traffic patterns across these particular venues, points of interest. So obviously this is great insight into where should I build another retail location, or where should I invest more marketing dollars, and also looking at their ROI. So their goal is to help marketers understand their performance within their current mix of investment portfolios, or perhaps media investment, if you will, and understand those particular patterns. So, this is not necessarily a new offering. We've seen other offerings similar to this, but the data sets that Unicast Insights are touting is different here, is that they say they're using both the GPS data aggregated as well as machine learning with a multitude of different features to determine location visitation statistics and insights. So let's geek out for one moment here, is that when they validated this against a ground truth data, that their models recorded an R squared of 91.6% or higher. So what is R squared? It is a statistical measure that represents the proportion of the variance for a dependent variable that is explained by an independent variable in a regression model. It doesn't make any sense. Apparently, it's just the way that you measure this. And an acceptable R squared is between 50% and 99%. So if you understood what that definition was, then you probably are really smart and could come explain this to us on the show. But regardless, it's being measured by another source. It sounds like it's being measured in a way that would say that it's, very, very best in class at that 91.6 percentile. So it's interesting. I think this is a good application of Unicast data and modeling, and being able to use this from a media mix standpoint, perhaps. This is a good time for this. I think this type of a product to be launching, because there is still that granular GPS data available, right? We still have that. It is not gone. It's just not as widely available as it used to be due to some of the privacy constraints and people opting out. But because it's still available, we should utilize that, and then utilize machine learning and kind of, like project what this foot traffic looks like. And at 91.6 percentile, correct? I think that's pretty good. And I think it could be applied to some great use cases as they have outlined here. What do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. I think this is a good move for Unicast. I remember a conversation I had back in the fall, I think, with Thomas, one of the founders, and we were talking about that kind of loss of mobile data from a density perspective. It's declining; it's still there, but what can be done to sort of compensate for that? And this seems to be the answer that they've come to market with, in that combining the GPS data with the machine learning models, to kind of give you sort of fill in those gaps and give you those projections and statistical models that give you that accuracy that a brand or agency is looking for. So I think this is really strong offering from them. There's been a couple other companies that I've looked at recently on the LBMA side of the world, in terms of companies that are purely doing population modeling and statistical modeling, based on just creating sort of virtual copy sets, if you will, of different parts of the country and models around that, and then looking at predicting movement patterns or predicting virus outbreaks or whatever. So things like that, I think, are what can be gleaned from this type of data set. And I think the direction that they're going with Unicast right now, be it in a brand sense or even looking at broader migration patterns or things like that, I think is a good fit for them. So I like it.
Very good.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump over to our second story now. So another company, I don't think we've talked about this company for quite some time, maybe a couple of years even. But SAP, the big German powerhouse, is still at it, and they are, kind of jumping on the generative AI train at the moment, and doing a very interesting activation. So it's a 10-day activation across 3 cities: New York, LA, and Atlanta. Using digital out of home, Meta and LinkedIn social platforms. And the idea of this is that, they're basically saying, look, the world is changing, events are happening really fast, and change happens really fast, in our world these days. And so, let's lean into that. Let's highlight, sort of, how fast things are moving. And let's use technology, in this case, generative AI technology, to kind of reflect that in the way we do advertising and social media campaigns. So essentially what they're doing is using this generative AI, they're adjusting the copy and the images of the advertising campaigns that they're running, every 24 hours or less than 24 hours. They're changing it on the fly. So each morning in these cities, new billboards and new social media posts are going live, interpreting, one image with business leaders, getting them ready for the day and changing that content based on the news, the culture, and what's happening in the city on the fly, and using the AI technology to kind of do that adjustment and make those changes. So I think it's kind of interesting. Number one, that SAP is doing this. They worked with BBDO, their agency in New York, to come up with this campaign, which is called Be Ready, and it's all about just being ready for business, being ready for your day, and executing in real time, and having that reflect kind of what's going on around us. So I think it's really powerful. I think it's an interesting showcase for using generative AI technology. I was actually playing around with, I mentioned Karsten earlier, so we were up at this cottage, and we spent some time kind of just playing around with ChatGPT a little bit. And I was, that was the first time I'd spent any concentrated time, really looking at it or playing around with it. And, my eyes were certainly opened to the possibilities of what can be done there. So, I think this is a good campaign and a good way to highlight kind of the power of that kind of technology. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so much that you can do with it. And I mean, I think of just simple in the house, what I've been doing is like using it to write stories for my children, like bedtime stories. And, you can weave in their names or, fictional characters that they choose into a story. And maybe it's something I can talk about, making sure that they finish their homework or do their chores, or like weave in something about, character building into the story that they're struggling with at that moment. And the fact that you can do that and it's just built in real time to tailor that is just like, now push that to like, what are we doing in with audiences and around advertising. And it's the same case and scenario here, right, where we are telling a story to a particular audience at a particular time, and kind of doing that in pretty close to real time in order to amplify that message. So I think that we're just like at the very, very tip of the iceberg here with what's going to happen. But I think that it is certainly something to pay attention to and figure out like what's coming next. What other applications do we have?
100%. All right.
Okay, so we're going to go to a story from Wakefern, and this is a retailer-owned cooperative, and they are expanding the use of these interactive multimedia sampling kiosks called Freeosk. So Freeosk is this in-store retail media company, and they have these kiosks that are supposed to be multi-sensory, right? Because you're getting to see and touch and hear, everything that's happening. It's very interactive. And it's really intended for this like turnkey in-store retail media activation. So think of like you're able to buy this product in the store, but you also have this kiosk that you can kind of interact with and understand a little bit more about the brand or about that specific product. And so they have piloted this. This is like expansion is coming after they tested these kiosks successfully, and now they're going to expand in 95 ShopRites and fresh grocer stores as part of this expansion. And we're always talking about like data and how does this work and how does this pull things together. So they're really focused on enabling shoppers to combine that in-store merchandising, automated sampling, and then the relevant content piece. And they're seeing this drive average sales lift of more than 50% for these products, which is, a great number if you're talking about any type of a lift. I mean, I think you're typically looking at like single digit percentiles, but 50% is amazing. So I think that this just shows that how a little bit of extra attention or something kind of new and interactive, something that is more sensory driven beyond just sitting on a shelf, can actually drive that engagement with that brand or with that SKU and lead to a higher sales lift. So this is interesting. I think it's one to watch. We've been hearing more and more about different like kiosk type plays in different environments. I think this has been around for quite a while. You think of how they started putting kiosks into the airports with earbuds, or kiosks into other places like when you walk in. And so now just to be able to do that with something that's a product that happens to be in the store, but it's a little bit more of an experience, you have like that pop-up type of a play here. And I think that it's something we'll probably see continue to be tested out and see how humans interact with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, coming out of COVID, obviously, when you look at grocery and you look at kind of, the whole, sampling or product sampling space, a lot of that was kind of killed off, right? It just wasn't something that you could do, from a just sanitary perspective, at the time. And so now, as we, sort of COVID's kind of abated and we're back to sort of business as usual, it's interesting to see sort of how technology now is kind of replacing, some of that, product sampling space. Although, to be fair, I was in Costco the other week, and they're back to like, people standing there handing out samples of stuff. So there's no Freeosks over there. But, I think this is good. I like that it's the multi-sensory aspects of it. I think the other thing for me that I'm interested in is, and wasn't in the story, but I'd love to learn more about what kind of measurement they have through these kind of kiosks, right? Like, is there any data in terms of how many people are interacting with it, or how many people are coming near it, or any kind of sort of measurement from a proximity-based or location-based engagement point of view, because I think that would be really interesting to kind of see, not just the people who are actually, touching it, but like, does it pick up any other data around it in terms of engagement? I know, like, for example, with the red box stuff we were talking about a few weeks ago, they're starting to do some of that kind of measurement now as well. So I think that would be a good opportunity for Freeosk, if they're not already doing that. So, all right, moving on to our final story now. So we're going to jump over to China, and specifically Shanghai. And one of the interesting things here is this new collaborative project between a architectural company called 100 Architects and China Telecom. And similar to what we had talked about over the last number of years in New York with a project called Link NYC, where they kind of took the old phone booths out and then replaced them with sort of Wi-Fi hotspot kind of phone booth things. This is a similar type of initiative, but it's much more, in my opinion, much more creative, much broader in scope than what was going on with Link NYC. So this is called the Shanghai Smart Booth. It's they call it a unique type of urban artifact. So number one, the power for this is powered by solar panels on the roof of it. It's very sophisticated in terms of functionality. So you can make phone calls from this. And in fact, when you sit down, you can make a free 3-minute phone call. It's got a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot, 5G transceiver, wireless charging for your mobile phones, has USB connectivity. It has touch screens with city maps built into it in the actual phone booth itself. It has a easy one-click taxi hailing service. So you just click a button and it brings, hails a taxi to that spot. It has a panic button as well. And then it's got some, sort of AI type of features around facial recognition. And that in particular, on its surface, I'm like, facial recognition. And then I'm like, okay, China. And then, like, that's kind of mandatory. But specifically what they're trying to address with this is assisting the elderly, because apparently there's a huge problem in China where elderly people are going missing, at alarming rates. And so this is a way to kind of recognize that, individuals potentially, and then help, kind of bring, help to them, or emergency responses to them quickly. So all of that's really cool. And then the last piece, just, to bring fun to it, not just, functionality of hailing taxis or, making free phone calls or getting your phone charged. They've built into one side of this a selfie system. So you can basically line up there and take, selfies with this phone booth, and then share those with your friends and family and other users. So all in all, I think it's super cool. It looks fun. It's kind of red with this like sloped roof and kind of this, weird boxy shape with some rounded edges. I think it's designed really well. And I think it brings a lot of value. So I don't know how many of these that they're rolling out, but if you're in Shanghai, you can probably find one of these somewhere in the city. So I quite like it. I think it's cool. I think we need more of these in other big cities around the world.
I agree. I think this is fun. There's a lot of nostalgia in the phone booth, right? You still see like old phone booths that are the entrance to a speakeasy. And so it's kind of like one of those things that we remember from our childhood. I don't know that our children do or will, but something like this I think would work well, specifically inside of, shopping centers or like malls.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a play for it. I can also understand, like, you have to be choosy where you put this, so that it is not mistreated and doesn't become run down really quickly. And I do like the idea that there's like the advertising and the digital out of home display on one side. that could potentially be like, something that monetizes it, and it keeps those free phone call availability. It keeps the availability to have like selfies, and it kind of brings together the photo booth and the phone booth into one. So it is a fun, I think, offering, and it's functional, right? You've mentioned the taxi hailing, as well as helping with that elderly population, and kind of like people who are maybe, confused or missing, get back to where they need to be. So I think all of this is really a positive movement and moment, in time for digital out of home. So I'm interested to see if it's going to scale beyond China. So TBD, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. That's our show for this week. You've been listening and watching episode number 622. I want to remind you, we are just now 2 weeks away from the LBMA's Retail Loco conference, which will be in Minneapolis at the Mall of America. So that's June 13th and 14th. Just go to thelbma.org and you can learn more about that, or get a ticket to come out and see us in person, and take in all the great content that will be shared there. So June 13th, 14th at the Mall of America for Retail Loco. We'll be back next week with another show. Thank you, everybody. Reach out if you have story ideas, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.